Hello, this is Sue Lloyd, Vice Chair of the ISSB, and I'm joined today by our Chair, Emmanuel Faber, and we're recording this podcast during our December board meeting here in Frankfurt. So this is our last meeting of 2023, and it marks 2 years since the ISSB was established and 1 year since our first meeting as a full board. And over that time, I think we've seen brilliant momentum, thanks not only to the work of our staff and board members, but to our stakeholders around the world that have really helped us to drive this momentum and develop our work. So in the first half of the year, we were working really hard, focused on finalising our first two standards, S1 and S2, taking into account all of the feedback we received from our interested parties around the world. We were really pleased to issue those standards at the end of June, which was a huge milestone for us and for the market, and we were thrilled to ring them in at stock exchanges around the world and really pleased to see huge market support at that time.
Yeah, that's right, Sue. That was certainly a great day, I should say even a great week, because it lasted for the whole week of the 26th of June. And of course the momentum didn't stop there. Continued with the IOSCO's endorsement, who called on its 130 member jurisdictions on July 25th. Those jurisdictions accounting for 95% of the world securities market in capitalization, to consider how they can incorporate IFRS S1 and IFRS S2 into their respective regulatory frameworks. We were also saluted by the Financial Stability Board earlier in July of this year, who announced the culmination of the work of the TCFD, citing the ISSB standards, which is a significant advancement for a more cohesive disclosure landscape. Then we saw a number of additional jurisdictions starting in July to come in the circle of those and growing circle of those around the world that start to consult and consider their routes to adoption of the ISSB standards, the latest of them coming at COP28 with Turkey, for instance. So that was certainly a big few last month on these topics. But we also progressed on technical aspects. So what kept our technical staff busy, Sue?
Yes, well, not only the technical staff, they kept us busy as well. So as I like to say, we moved on from delivering the standards to our after-sales service. So our foundational work following the delivery of S1 and S2. So focusing really on two things. Firstly, the implementation of the standards, and secondly, starting to think about our future work plan. So to support application, we've been focusing on working to improve the international applicability of the ISSB standards. We've been working on educational material. We've established a transition implementation group that will be used to discuss application questions that our stakeholders submit to us. We've been working on the digital taxonomy to facilitate digital reporting using our standards, and working hard on interoperability with other standard setters, in particular Europe with the European Sustainability Reporting Standards and with GRI. So that takes us to this month, and what a few weeks to end our year on, Emmanuel.
Yeah, and certainly I should mention in those few weeks, COP28, it was striking for me, who stood in the main room in COP26 at Glasgow during the announcement of the creation of ISSB by the IFRS Foundation. Was striking 2 years later that, of course, the same multilateral organization, the OECD, UN entities, the IMF, the World Bank, the Financial Stability Board, of course, and others, IOSCO, as a core support and sponsor for the initiative, were there. But a lot of market participants were also there to support our work with this declaration of commitment to advance the adoption or use of the global baseline with our climate standards around the world, that gathered close to 400 stakeholders overall from 64 jurisdictions committing to advance those standards. The amount of collective membership of that support group is amazing, with close to 10,000 companies, thousands of investors representing collectively more than 100 trillions of assets, as well as actually many stock exchanges. I think close to, in total, membership of 50 stock exchanges around the world, including from Africa, Middle East, and others. So I really was struck by the fact how much not only the founding organizations of why we exist from a market infrastructure standpoint, but also market participants that time were flagging their support and the urgent need to establish this global baseline. So that was really telling, and I think I was super happy that we were able at that occasion to announce the launch of our Knowledge Hub as one of the very first capacity building concrete mechanism that we're putting in place. It houses resources developed by both the IFRS Foundation and third-party organizations to advance understanding of the ISSB standards. The hub will evolve over time, of course, and by the way, to our audience today, I really encourage you to check out the frequently asked questions and other guides and new resources, such as the tool mapping the integrated reporting framework with S1 and S2, and more will be coming in the coming weeks, really. I'd also like to mention the fact that we are advancing really quickly on the translation of our standards. It's a totally new approach to accounting standard setting in the world. Not only the English version of the standards will be there, but also the Spanish versions and so many others, working on 10 languages today to be delivered in the course of 24 for jurisdictions, preparers and others to be ready. So I really saw that COP as a launchpad for the adoption and use phase of our standards. You were there too, Sue, with a number of our colleagues. What stood up for you there?
Yes, I was there running around. We were all super busy trying to engage with as many people as possible. And I think for me, my main takeaway from COP was really about the strength of collaboration. So we've got great partnerships, and there was a real sense of a common effort working together to really drive this better disclosure that we're all working so hard to achieve. So we were working closely, for example, with CDP, and we announced our intent to cooperate with ISO. And of course, there was a lot of interest and questions and conversations about our work with GRI, who have established the Sustainability Innovation Lab in Singapore, where we're coordinating with them. So there was a lot of interest in those partnerships. It was also great to see the Public Oversight, Accounting and Audit Standards Authority of Turkey announcing at COP that the ISSB standards are going to be incorporated into the Turkish regulatory framework from 2024. And it resonated with the call we heard at COP28 for the global baseline, and we really welcome the leadership provided by the Turkish authority. So that was a really positive note for us to end our engagements with at COP. Coming back to London with the IIAG, we had a meeting with our investor advisory group just this week. This is a group that's really important for us to hear from regularly to really make sure we understand the views of investors about our work and development. And we talked to them about what we should be focusing on looking forward with our work plan, and heard a really strong message from them of the importance of really driving the adoption and implementation of high quality disclosure about sustainability risks and opportunities using S1 and S2. So really great to get that confirmation of support there. So that takes us to this board week, Emmanuel, our last meeting of the year. What were your key takeaways?
Yeah, indeed. That has been a great week this week. Last week for us as a board in our main office here in Frankfurt. Great to be all here with the team. I would say most of our week has been really about supporting the application of S1 and S2. It started with the ISSB standards, who form an important source of guidance for companies applying S1. And following public consultation and deliberations on the feedback from the marketplace, the ISSB agreed on the updates to the ISSB standards, which are enhancing the international applicability of the ISSB standards, removing and replacing jurisdiction-specific references and definitions without significantly altering industries, topics, or metrics. So it's really interesting because we have a special due process for that, and I think personally, I made that remark that I think the methodology of adjustments to jurisdiction-specific to global industry-specific metrics that makes sense was one and is certainly one on which we can build further in the future for, in particular, our industry standards. The second aspect was that we continue to advance our work on the digital taxonomy, which we are on track to publish in the first half of next year. We discussed making changes in a number of areas following the feedback that we received through our consultation earlier this year. So this includes around the granularity and data type of particular narrative disclosures. So good progress, great interest actually in this pretty geeky technical aspect of our work by all our board members, and I really liked that. We continue to learn a lot, as this is the first ever time that as a board we're exposed to these very, very important topics of digital taxonomy. Not something that the board discussed this week, but also happening this week and supporting implementation was the publication of a new educational material for IFRS S2, which I think I've been publicly saying it was something I'd liked a lot. And so this was timely given discussions at COP28, as the material is about nature and climate, which for the first time, the final agreement at COP28 have made a close related link, in addition to the final communique of COP28, mentioning the start of the transition out of fossil fuel, which is making the use of S2 so much even topical for companies that will now have increased transition risks and opportunities, as the global consensus for transitioning out of fossil fuel is growing. Mentions about investment in renewable energy and all that sort of things. So in addition to that, the communique was for the first time mentioning the direct link with the nature agenda and making reference to the Kunming-Montreal COP15 of last year, and the fact that that COP had set a pathway to a target of 30% protection of biodiversity by 2030, illustrating the nexus, an important nexus that climate has with a number of other topics, including nature. So with that long rambling of why this is so important, Sue, what did we do this week with that particular educational material? Can you tell us more?
Yeah, so getting back to the educational material, which is of course very close to Emmanuel's heart, formerly fondly referred to as the Pixels project, but now given a formal name of educational material. And this is designed to be helpful. So it doesn't change what's in S2 at all, but it's illustrating how to apply S2. Take a look at it, please. I think it's really interesting to do a couple of things. Firstly, just to help understand how to think through the disclosure requirements in S2 in combination with S1. But then more specifically, to really make people stop and think about how climate-related risks and opportunities are not just about greenhouse gas emissions, that there are things closely associated with nature and social aspects of climate, which means we don't need a nature standard or a social standard to get to these disclosures. And I think that's the core point here. So there's 3 examples in the educational material that are designed to help companies think about how they might approach some aspects of their climate-related disclosures depending on their facts and circumstances. One is looking at a business with subject to water stress caused by climate change. One is looking at an opportunity for a company as a result of interest in timber for building. And the third one is looking at how a company, in explaining its transition planning, might need to provide information about how it is thinking about managing changes in its workforce as a result of that transition plan. Take a look at them, because I really think it helps bring to life how to think through what to provide disclosures about, to provide material information to investors. So in case you can't tell, I'm pretty proud of what the staff's done there with that work. Then the third business board session of our week was continuing our discussion about our future work plan and the feedback on the agenda consultation. So Emmanuel, what did we talk about in particular this week?
Well, we indeed continued hearing from our staff with a great paper, this time outlining the feedback that we received from the investors, who are, of course, the core audience for us as we exist, as we say in our baseline at the foundation as ISSB, better information for better decision. So we're totally focused on investments, decisions, and the resulting capital allocation. The investors are the target users and main beneficiaries of the disclosures companies will provide applying our standards. So their feedback, including from our most recent engagement with our investor advisory group that you just pointed to in London last week, Sue, indicates a clear desire for there to be a strong focus on supporting the implementation and adoption of IFRS S1 and S2 to drive global adoption and procure high-quality, comparable disclosures. And so that is overall the end of a huge year for us. But next year, as we take this work plan forward and finalize it, it also promises to be another big year. Sue, maybe what do priorities for 2024 look like?
Well, I think big picture, the priorities for us next year are probably firstly supporting implementation of our new standards, S1 and S2, which everyone's telling us is really, really important, and we certainly agree. The second is making sure these standards actually get used, so driving the adoption, both regulatory adoption and also voluntary application of our standards around the world, so that'll be a big focus for us as well. And then thirdly, the standard setting side of things. So we'll need to make our decisions on the work plan, but we will be building out the global baseline of disclosures informed by the feedback that we've received from the market. So those, I think, are the three big areas for next year. And of course, it was great news that the trustees have reappointed you for a second term, Emmanuel. Personally delighted and relieved to have that announcement. So you will be guiding us through, chairing us so ably through until 2027.
Yes, I'll be hanging around with you guys here and in many other places. I think we're doing some kind of vital work here. I'm impressed by the overall momentum in our organization in building the board, the processes, the standards themselves, the consultations, this educational material that you've been talking about, delivering these three foundational topics that we have said we would deliver by the end of this year: the SASB standards, international applicability, the digital taxonomy progress, and this educational material. I think all of that is really a tribute to how the foundation has been working with the teams and support to us, but also tribute to our collective and the board. So I'm honored to lead our board working with you and Dindong and the rest of all the crowd. That I will be super excited to continue to make a difference, because we believe the capital markets could work better. So with such profound thoughts, let me close this feedback of our week until next month, which will be next year, when we will be in London having actually our first joint board meeting and session with the IASB and the ISSB to discuss the feedback that we received on Project 4 of the RFI, which is about the integrated reporting thinking and how that should inform potentially both boards' work. So stay tuned for you who are listening to us. That's a big new format of conversations and meetings for IASB and ISSB, a new era as well for the foundation, going into the very first format of a one foundation with one IASB and ISSB meeting live in a month's time. So stay tuned. I wish you all warm season's greetings, well wishes for the new year, and see you and speak to you very soon.
For the latest developments from either the International Sustainability Standards Board or the International Accounting Standards Board, make sure to subscribe on the IFRS Foundation website, www.ifrs.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please take some time to rate, review, and subscribe on your preferred podcast player.